25 to 7. Hello there, very good morning to you. Front pages on this Monday morning stack up like this.
Is the Telegraph leading with claims by allies of Suella Braverman that she's the victim of a smear campaign amid the speeding fine row?
Times reports on patients being encouraged to use an NHS app to book private health care in an attempt to cut waiting lists. What's wrong with that?
The Mail reveals that drug driving's become more prevalent than drink driving, according to a new shock police report.
And finally, the Star says it's Big Britain.
Woo.
Temperatures across the country could reach 24 degrees this week.
I'm so here for that. I'm so excited about the final arrival of summer.
Suella Braverman. Kevin says she was offered a speed awareness course and was probably just asking someone about the chances of getting a one-to-one course. This is just another civil service stitch-up, you think, with her?
Peter says, I don't believe anything the civil service says. They are now determined to get Suella. I'd rather have her as PM than Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer.
Denise says she's a high-profile, busy person and security needs have to be considered as well. I'm sure an online course these days is just as effective and efficient. So you see there that there seems to be a lot of sympathy for someone in her position asking for what we believe she asked for. So maybe this is all just a storm in a teacup. Let's find out now. We've got to go through the papers. Dawn Neeson. Morning, Dawn.
Good morning.
And Fraser Myers. Dawn, you're going to start with this Braverman story. Telegraph.
Absolutely, pretty much in every single paper, but the Telegraph have gone big on it, and their angle is that Braverman smear fears over curbs on migrants. Now, you have to say the timing of this driving story is very, what's the word, coincidental, isn't it? The fact that after last week's, her big speech on migration and how she's determined to curb it again, and, British are forgetting how to do hard work, etc., etc. So then this comes out within days of that. So,
but seriously, is that a suggestion then that someone in Rishi Sunak's team have leaked this, or because there's no way he wants this story out?
I wouldn't have said that he did, but she did infamously. Suella Braverman did infamously describe the activist blob of left-wing lawyers, civil servants, and the Labour Party. I'm thinking more
civil
service that this is coming from. But Team Suella are saying this is a smear campaign, nothing more than that, and I think the original story was indeed, as you described it, a storm in a teacup. I think it's like, what she tried to do, I think you made the point earlier, Isabel, they're not treated like the rest of us. Of course they're not treated like the rest of us. So, you don't expect her to go and sit in a Novotel room and have this speed awareness course. Are you punching the table, or you want to punch me?
No.
Catching flies.
Get all these little flies.
So I think, instantly David Baddiel, who's no fan of the Tory party, tweeted that he was on a speed awareness course, and he went and did it, and was sitting in the back of the class trying to keep his head down, etc., etc. The comedian, very well known, obviously. And at the end of the class, the person taking it said, right, does anyone have any questions? And someone stuck their hand up and said, oh yeah, can I tell my mates I was in a speed awareness course with David Baddiel? So can you imagine if Suella Braverman had been sitting in that room, everyone else would, probably half of them would have wanted to kill her, and the other half
when she was Attorney General, she wasn't necessarily as well known as she is now. Do you think people knew who she was as well last summer?
I think somebody would have. She's always been quite a divisive figure that most people are aware of in politics, hasn't she? But this is sort of like basically saying that this is a smear campaign, and the whole.
Have you ever done a speed awareness course?
I haven't driven a car for 21 years now, so no, I haven't.
Fraser?
I've never been caught speeding.
Right.
Oh, very carefully answered.
Let's take a look, Fraser, how the Times is covering. This was, of course, a Sunday Times scoop, and interesting that obviously Labour and the Lib Dems are trying to capitalise on this as much as possible. But as far as I can tell, either she's broken the ministerial code or not. It's surely just that simple. So you need to get the independent ethics advisor to look into it to make that decision. So it's not politicised.
Well, this seems to be the solution to all kind of political problems. Get some ethics advisor to decide. Is this really an ethical question?
I suppose the questions are being asked are: do ministers get special treatment?
Yeah.
Are they above the law? She was Attorney General. Should she not have been totally flawless in her conduct.
I understand. She should have had the wisdom to know not to ask advice about that, not to, especially to civil servants who she should really know are not her biggest fans, and that this could lead to problems down the line. I think that's a political misjudgment. But is it, in the end, let's remind ourselves, she did pay the fine. She didn't get any special treatment. She didn't do the private one-on-one speed awareness course that she wanted.
So if you were the Prime Minister, would you bother with consulting the Ethics Minister on this, or just say...
Well, if you're Rishi Sunak, it's a good way to not have to make a decision yourself. But he should really, I would probably back her if I were him.
Well, do you think that the fact that he's not backing her and that is kicking the responsibility to his ethics advisor actually indicative of what Dawn was saying, that she obviously spoke out of line last week, and this is a little bit of a...
Yeah, she's starting to cause problems for the government. She's attacking government policy. It's well known that she is very much at odds with the government's own kind of migration policy. She's much more worried about what we suspect might be 700,000 people net coming here. She wants to get that down. Rishi Sunak's more relaxed about it. So there's all kinds of reasons why Sunak might be going cold on her. But I think that there is a sort of danger here, especially if we do think that this is the civil service, because we've seen what's happened to Dominic Raab, where actually another storm in a teacup, really, accused of hurting people's feelings, never actually swearing or anything like that, but it was often, the sense that the report into his bullying actually didn't have many smoking guns, and yet he was sacked anyway. So that kind of gave a green light to officials to say that.
Do you know what? Too many people moan about too many things and they're listened to. That's part of the problem. We see the reaction coming in from you guys at home today is saying basically, move on. There's more important things in life. There we go. Now, front page of the Express. Europe turns blind eye to let migrants reach UK. Scandalous, if true.
This is a series of investigations the Daily Express are doing all this week into the migration situation, which obviously is very important. The official legal migration figures due to be released this week, 700,000 to potentially 1 million net migration, and that's the legal ones. The illegal ones we don't know about. Now, the Daily Express have done today an interview with a people smuggler called Ari, who basically claims that Europe is getting rid of migrants. He says France and Europe in general could do much, much more to stop the boat crossings, which are killing people at the end of the day, but they just don't want to, because it gets rid of the problem that they're facing themselves. And let's face it, this is a problem that all countries in Europe are facing up to. Italy declared a state of emergency over the migrants heading to Italy and through Italy. And this smuggler is saying that he charges migrants £8,000 to £9,500 to be smuggled literally into France to get to the UK. And it's 45,000 last year that we know about. But this people smuggler, who's an Iraqi Kurd, is saying that by his estimation, at least 6 to 7 boats a night are crossing that channel. Exactly.
6 to 7 or 67?
6 to 7
right.
a night, but they're the fully loaded dinghies, Eamonn, and that's every night. And he goes, the situation is going to get horrific as the summer months and the weather gets on. And he explains that the migrants don't want to stay in Italy and Germany, in the countries they literally have to bypass, because the black market, the black jobs market in the UK is so much more better for them to work in. So it's nothing to do with they've got family here or they speak the language. It's just the black market jobs.
That 6 to 7 or 67 that I was highlighting there is very, very important to you. Once I went to Scotland to a place called the Kyle of Lochalsh, which is a port opposite the Isle of Skye. And there's now a bridge between the Kyle and the Isle of Skye so you can drive over, but in those days it was a ferry. And I said to the guy, I'd driven a long way, and I put my seat back. I said to him, how long will this take? And he said, 45 minutes. And I said, oh, that's good. That's enough time for a doze. So I put my seat back. And within minutes, I was getting honk, honk, beep, beep, bang, bang. I said, I thought you said this was 45 minutes. He said, I said, 4 to 5 minutes. So
very
there
good.
you are.
Very, very good.
There's a bridge.
This is definitely 6 to 7.
Okay.
To him.
Let's talk about the NHS, Fraser, look, I think it's the third of 5 big speeches from Keir Starmer today setting out his vision for the country, this time focusing on the NHS and big, bold claims. But this is actually a splash based on what the Tories are planning to do, which is to use the existing NHS app to enable people to go and use the private health sector for things like diagnostics for cancer and the like. Tell us more.
So the idea is kind of opening up patient choice. I mean, obviously everyone knows that there is a massive waiting list, more than 7 million people, and apparently it's set to rise incredibly, despite all the kind of political attention that has been put on it recently. At the moment, the NHS does about the private sector does about 140,000 NHS operations a month. So hopefully that will rise, and it's important to take up this extra capacity because people need it, but there is a lot of suggestions that it's nowhere near enough to make up for it. And a lot of people, choice is a good thing, but for, I think, the vast majority of patients, they actually just want to go to their local hospital and don't want to be shopping around and don't want to, you do want someone like your GP or someone like that to actually just say, this is your course, this is what's going to happen, we've sorted it out for you. I think that's what most people
can imagine being in central London and there'd be a bit of capacity in somewhere remote where there's less demand, and then you're having to travel miles, and that creates a two-tier system, doesn't it? And who's got the ability to miss work or pay the transport and whatever else?
And you could possibly go, be asked to go all the way across the country. I mean, if that suits you, if you can skip a few months on the waiting list, but it's not going to be for everyone.
The thing is with the NHS using private hospitals and private healthcare to treat patients, the NHS is still paying for that. It's not free. I mean, we're not paying for it, the NHS paying for it, so it's a vast amount of money.
I was in Blackpool one year, and I checked into the Hilton Hotel in Blackpool, and there were lots of people from Northern Ireland queuing up, saying, Eamonn, how are you? What are you doing here? Whatever. And I turned to them, I said, what are you doing here? They said, oh, we're here. The hospital has sent us over. What? The hospital in Belfast flew them over and put them up in the Hilton Hotel in Blackpool to have their procedures carried out in Blackpool on the NHS.
And that was including paying for the transport and everything?
Yes,
Oh my God.
It was like a holiday, they said. They were going to be there for a week.
Well, doesn't this raise more awareness of how much wastage there actually is in the NHS?
You see the waiting lists, Fraser. What's the point of having waiting lists? When we're at the 7 million, they're never going to be reduced. Why don't we just rip them up and start again?
I think that would cause people a lot of stress, but I see what you're getting at. It's interesting. So Keir Starmer was talking about the Labour government is going to meet all the NHS targets.
No, they're not.
They're not. Of course they're not. But the targets have been missed since 2018. So, we talk a lot about how the strain, COVID, the pandemic, the lockdown has put on the system, and that's all true. But even prior to that, the NHS was failing to deliver.
Does Keir Starmer actually explain how he's going to do it?
Not really.
No,
I mean, he doesn't need
to do with non-doms.
Keir Starmer's very light on commitments, and any commitments he does make, he sort of reverses within a few months. So,
Yeah. Terrible situation, though. Absolutely. What our NHS has turned into, and I think a lot of it's got to do as well when you see the strikes that are going on. A lot of them will say it's not just about money, it's about the background, conditions, organisation, administration, whatever. But Keir Starmer says he'll sort it out. What do you think? So when it comes to being stopped driving your car or whatever, you're more likely to be done for drugs in your system than drink in your system.
This is the splash on the Daily Mail today, and obviously we're all talking about driving fines at the moment with Suella Braverman, but this is a shocking story. A shock report reveals that danger on the roads as 80 drug drivers are caught behind the wheel. Now, this is a report from the National Police Chiefs Council, and there was a study last year, and that's where the statistics are from, the 80 a day. The problem with this is, so more and more people are now drug driving than drink driving, but they're escaping justice because the processing of the blood samples takes so long to do because, as we've discussed, the NHS system is failing. So they don't get the blood samples tested for 4 to 5 months, but the police have only got 6 months to prosecute the drug drivers. So most of them are just getting away with it. And this is, the fines for drug driving are exactly the same as drink driving. But it's just like people are doing it, but they're not. And the Mail have got horrific examples here of families that have lost loved ones ones to drug driving. It's just a horrific again, isn't it?
But what makes anyone think that a drug in their system is any different than drink in the system? They might say, oh, I've had a drink, I'll not drive, but I've taken horse drugs or what is it called? Ketamine or whatever it is.
What are the implications on reactions? Because you know that drinking obviously makes you much more slow to react. But what if you took something like an amphetamine or MDMA that sort of speeds up your heart?
It does.
Does that actually affect your reactions as well?
Yes, it does.
Right.
I mean, it affects every part of you, doesn't it? So, and it depends obviously on what drugs we're talking about as to the effect it's going to have. If you're taking a speed-like drug, that's going to make your reactions sort of probably overreactive. And if you're taking something like cannabis or something like that, it's going to slow you down. But this also covers legal drugs, and there are limits to how many legal drugs you can have in your system before you are driving illegally. Whereas if it's an illegal drug like the ones we've just discussed, then that is straightforward. You can't have any in the system because obviously it's illegal.
Fraser, we've been talking about weddings this morning. I don't know if either of you are off to any weddings this summer, but it's an expensive business, up by 18% in the last year.
Yeah, the Independent is saying the average wedding guest is going to spend over £1,000, which is like, are you getting married? You know, that's...
Yeah, exactly.
It is unbelievable. And accommodation, the biggest cost. It's not surprising. If you go to any sort of seaside town, the kind of places where a lot of people want to get married, the cost for a hotel, even a really terrible one for a single night,
get married abroad now, don't they?
People get married abroad.
Yeah,
and you have
the expensive
weddings.
And
then if you're invited,
and the stag do.
Exactly, if you're invited to the stag do, then that's another expense, and you hope that they've chosen somewhere cheap in Eastern Europe or something like that, and not Dubai. So yeah, there's obviously, you know, inflation is a massive problem, but this
food
is
costs
way
alone.
above that.
I mean, food's 20% up as well. You know, when you look what it takes to feed your guests and all that.
But the thing is, Eamonn, you don't have to have an expensive wedding.
No.
Everybody thinks now you have to go to some really posh country hotel and have, you know, very exotic. You don't have to. You can actually get married very cheaply if you want to.
Can you still, though? I think it's harder than ever by the sounds of it. The cost of everything going up, the cost of a dress, flowers. You know, as soon as you mention a wedding, noughts are added on the end.
That's it, but you can go to your local registrar, I think it's about £120, and you can get married literally with two strangers off the street as well.
I know, but most people don't want that, do they?
I know most
Need
people
something
don't.
Instagram
You don't
worthy, I
have
think.
to.
Yeah, maybe the pressure of Instagram with the flower wreath and everything else.
But that's it. Who are you getting married for? You getting married for you, or to show everyone else?
Do you remember Carol Smiley,
Yeah.
Changing Rooms, the Scottish presenter? She now marries people.
Oh, she's a celebrant.
Yeah, she marries people and marries people as well. But that's
Not at the same time, hopefully.
not the same time. But you can do both in the one day.
My mum has a theory. The more you spend on a wedding, the shorter your marriage.
I think your mum's right.
She thinks that people can get all their priorities wrong.
Yeah.
Listen, Fraser Myers, Dawn Neeson, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
indeed.
Thank you.